Hey there. Ready to dive into something a little different. We're cracking open the Zombie Survival Guide. But here's the twist.
Ooh, a twist. I like it.
We're not just looking at fighting off the undead.
Yeah,
We're pulling out survival wisdom that applies to, well, any disaster, really.
that's clever. I mean, it's really fascinating how much zombie survival prep overlaps with a general preparedness.
Right.
Being resourceful, aware, you
Yeah.
know, adapting to the unexpected. That's valuable no matter what you're facing.
Okay, let's break down some key takeaways. First up, physical fitness.
Oh, definitely.
The guide makes it clear your body is your primary weapon.
Absolutely. In a survival situation, your endurance. That's everything. You might have to outrun danger, travel long distances, or be physically active for a long time.
Yeah, it specifically says to focus on cardio, like training for a marathon, not, bulking up.
Makes sense.
It even suggests learning a martial art, but one that prioritizes escape over, going on the attack.
Right, because when you're facing danger, your goal is to survive, not be a hero. Knowing how to break free or evade an attack, that could save your life.
Speaking of life-saving, let's talk tools and weapons. The guide is seriously meticulous about caring for your tools, almost like you're treating them like living things.
Oh, absolutely. In a crisis, your tools, they're your lifeline. A dull blade, a jammed firearm, or a broken tool could mean the difference between life or death.
Exactly.
Regular cleaning, maintenance, even taking them to a professional. Key.
The guide really gets into specific weapons, favoring edged weapons and firearms for, I guess, reliability and effectiveness.
Yeah.
But it also has some surprising rankings.
Yeah, the machete gets a lot of praise. It's so versatile. Clearing brush, self-defense.
Right.
But chainsaws, not so much.
Because of the fuel. Right. And the noise. You'd be attracting unwanted attention.
Exactly. Plus, they need special maintenance, and they can be dangerous to use if you don't know what you're doing.
Okay, let's shift gears to early warning signs. The guide talks about spotting those subtle clues that something's wrong, even if it's not, well, a full-blown zombie apocalypse.
This is where it gets really interesting. It's
Yeah.
all about situational awareness, being observant, paying attention.
Right.
The guide highlights things like spikes in missing person reports, strange animal behavior, or incidents that get covered up. Things that might seem small but could be a sign of something bigger.
Like connecting the dots.
Yeah.
Trusting your gut when something feels off.
Exactly. It's like developing a sixth sense for danger.
So let's say things do go south. Where do you go? Where's the best place to seek refuge? The guide actually advises against staying in the city.
Yeah, cities, they might have more resources at first, but they quickly become death traps in a large-scale disaster. They attract danger, resources run out fast, escape routes get jammed.
So you're saying rural areas are the way to go.
Rural areas offer isolation, and you have more opportunities to be self-sufficient, Growing food, finding water, being away from dense populations.
Yeah, that makes sense. But what about finding a secure location within a rural area? The guide has some interesting suggestions, like prisons.
Now, prisons are built for containment. They already have security in place. Walls, fences, guard towers might not be the most comfortable, but they offer good protection.
Right.
And then there's the even more unexpected suggestion of offshore oil rigs.
Offshore oil rigs.
I know, right? But think about it. Complete isolation from land-based threats. They have fuel, water, and the potential for power generation.
Okay, so we've got fitness, weapons, early warning signs, and potential hideouts. But surviving isn't just about hiding, is it? The guide also talks about adapting to different terrains.
Absolutely. It dives into forests, plains, swamps, even tundra. Each one has unique opportunities and challenges.
Like using trees for vantage points in a forest, or avoiding high ground in the plains where you're exposed.
Exactly. You got to understand your surroundings and use them to your advantage. Adapt your strategies based on the terrain and the specific threats you might face.
Now, this is something I think a lot of people overlook. Survival's not just about the physical stuff.
Oh, you're so right.
The guide digs into the mental side of things, too.
It's huge. It talks about facing your fears, controlling your emotions, and staying clear-headed under pressure. Panic and fear can be just as deadly as any physical threat.
So how do you even begin to develop that kind of mental toughness?
The guide recommends mental exercises, visualization, and even exposure therapy. Gradually exposing yourself to more stressful situations to build up your resilience.
So almost like mental strength training, preparing yourself mentally for the worst so you can stay calm and focused when it happens.
Exactly. Building that inner strength, that ability to stay grounded and make good decisions when everything around you is falling apart.
And the guide also stresses that survival's rarely a solo thing. It talks a lot about the importance of having a strong group.
Oh, for sure. You need people you can trust, with different skills, who can support each other through the tough times. A strong community boosts morale, shares resources, and gives you a sense of belonging in a chaotic world.
And the guide goes beyond just surviving. It actually delves into rebuilding society after a collapse. It stresses studying historical accounts and survival stories.
Yeah, learning from the mistakes and successes of those who came before us. History is full of lessons about resilience, adaptation, and the good and bad in people.
So we've covered a lot. From physical fitness and tools to mental toughness, community, and even rebuilding society. Who knew a zombie survival guide could be so insightful?
It really shows that even in the craziest scenarios, there are valuable lessons to be learned about preparedness, resourcefulness, and the human spirit.
And remember, these lessons apply to more than just a zombie apocalypse. Any challenging situation, really. Being prepared, both physically and mentally, gives you an advantage in any crisis.
Absolutely. So what stands out to you so far? What resonates the most?
For me, it's the emphasis on knowledge being like a weapon. The more you know about potential threats, survival strategies, the world around you, the better you are at handling any crisis, really.
You know, that's a really good point. The guide hammers that home information is key to survival. Learn first aid, wilderness survival, history, psychology, you name it.
Exactly. Be a lifelong learner. Always looking for new information, new skills that could come in handy. The more you know, the more you can adapt, the more resourceful you become.
It's like the guide saying, surviving any crisis, it takes being adaptable, resourceful, and assessing the situation with a clear head.
You got it. You got to improvise, use what you've got, and adjust your plans when things change. That flexibility, that quick thinking. Could mean life or death.
Speaking of life or death, the guide does get down to the nitty-gritty of, actually dealing with zombies. It outlines different strategies for confronting them. One that sticks out is lure and destroy, using what you know about how zombies act to your advantage. Right. It reminds us zombies go for sound and movement, so with lure and destroy, you create a distraction, draw them in, and then boom, eliminate them strategically.
So you're using their predictability against them. The guide outlines a few different approaches to lure and destroy. One is the barricade.
The barricade. You're building a physical barrier, a wall, fence, whatever you can find, to funnel those zombies into a kill zone. Classic defense tactic, really, used throughout history.
And then you let loose when they're trapped.
Not necessarily. It's about using what you have. Could be guns, could be traps, edged weapons, even fire. Carefully, of course.
Right. Fire can get out of control really fast, especially in a city.
Exactly. Think about your surroundings. Choose what's effective and safe. Sometimes a well-placed trap is better than a whole bunch of bullets.
The barricade is all about defense. Right about a more, offensive tactic. The guide mentions something called the tower.
The tower, another classic military strategy. Use height to your advantage. Find a tall, strong structure, something like a building, a water tower, even a tree stand. Use it to see what's around you.
And pick off zombies from a distance, I'm guessing. But what if you need to be more mobile? There's something called mobile towers, right?
Mobile towers, yeah, those are your armed vehicles. Think trucks, buses, even tanks decked out with barriers and weapons. You cover ground fast, move supplies, and engage threats on your terms.
A moving fortress, that's awesome.
It's definitely powerful, but risky too. All that noise and commotion attracts more zombies, so gotta be ready for that.
Okay, this one sounds interesting. The cage. What's that about?
The cage, a classic trapping strategy. You make a secure enclosure with live bait inside, something noisy to draw those zombies in. Once they're trapped, you either take them out from a safe distance or let them starve.
So it's a way to thin the horde without putting yourself in direct danger.
Yeah.
I like it.
It can be super effective, but you gotta plan it right. Pick the right spot, build a strong cage, make sure that bait is gonna work. You don't want to trap yourself.
Now, when you're talking large scale, the guide mentioned something called the stampede. That sounds intense, like a whole other level of zombie control.
The stampede, yeah, that's a bold one. You're purposely provoking a mass movement of zombies. It's manipulating their behavior, directing them toward a certain spot, like a natural obstacle or a kill zone you set up.
So using their own mindless movement against them, that's clever, but so risky.
Definitely not for the faint of heart. You gotta plan carefully, be coordinated, and really understand how zombies behave. If a stampede gets out of control, it could be a disaster.
Okay, we've got some ground strategies. What about going airborne? The guide mentions airborne sweeps.
Airborne sweeps, yeah, those are about using aircraft, helicopters, planes to locate and take out zombies from above. Gives you a big advantage, right? You get reconnaissance, targeted strikes, and you cover a lot of ground quickly.
I can see that being helpful, especially for scouting dangers or escape routes. But wouldn't fuel and supplies be an issue in a disaster?
Oh, for sure. You gotta use air power strategically, wisely. Pick your targets carefully. Not a solution for everything, but can be super valuable in the right situation.
And then the most extreme one of all, the firestorm. That sounds pretty serious.
The firestorm, yeah, that's scorched earth. You're using fire to create a massive, unstoppable blaze. It consumes everything in its path, zombies included, super dangerous, incredibly destructive. You could end up with widespread environmental damage.
So it's a last resort. Only when things are really desperate.
Exactly. It's a reminder that survival sometimes comes at a price. Sometimes the best solutions can also cause the most damage.
You wouldn't believe this, but the guide even covers underwater battles.
I know, right? You think you're safe in the water? Think again. Zombies might be slow and clumsy on land, but in the water, they can still be a problem. They can't really swim, but they can walk on the bottom, hide in submerged spots, even cling to floating stuff.
That's terrifying. So how do you even deal with underwater zombies? Hold your breath and hope for the best.
Nope. The guide suggests specialized equipment, scuba gear, spear guns, nets, and using tactics similar to underwater hunting or salvage operations.
So you're adapting to the environment, even if that environment is underwater.
Exactly. The key takeaway here is that surviving a zombie outbreak, or any disaster for that matter, you gotta be flexible, resourceful, and able to think outside the box.
The guide really emphasizes mental toughness too. Not just physical skills and plans, but the mental preparation as well.
It's essential. It talks about facing fears, controlling emotions, and staying calm under pressure. Panic and fear. Just as deadly as any physical threat.
So how do you even develop that kind of mental strength?
There are lots of ways. Mental exercises, visualization techniques, even exposure therapy. Gradually exposing yourself to tougher and tougher situations builds resilience.
Like mental strength training. Preparing yourself mentally for the worst so you can handle it when it hits.
Exactly. It's about building that inner strength, being able to stay grounded and make rational decisions when everything around you is chaotic and scary.
And it's not all about individual strength either. The guide talks about having a strong support network.
So important. Having people you can trust to share the burden, to offer support, that can make a world of difference.
Because surviving, it's rarely a solo mission.
Exactly. It's about community, working together, and supporting each other.
Now, the guide doesn't shy away from the tough stuff either. It talks about ethical dilemmas, the hard choices you might face when it's life or death.
Yeah, in a crisis, you might have to make really tough calls, ones that go against your beliefs. You might have to ration supplies, make sacrifices, even defend yourself against other survivors who are desperate and unpredictable.
That's a heavy thought. It's a good reminder that survival's complicated, and it forces us to face some uncomfortable truths about ourselves and what people are capable of.
The guide doesn't try to make it sound easy. It prepares you for the realities of survival, both physical and mental, whether it's a zombie apocalypse or something else entirely.
So we've talked zombie fighting strategies, the mental side of survival, the importance of community, and the tough ethical choices. What about the long game? What happens after the initial crisis is over? How do you rebuild? What does the guide say about that?
That's one of the most interesting parts, actually. It focuses on the future. It's not just about surviving the now. It's about creating a future for humanity that can last.
And learning from the past, right? Both the good and the bad.
Absolutely. It tells us to study history, understand what caused the collapse, and not repeat those same mistakes. We can learn a lot from the past, both positive and negative.
Because if you don't learn from the past, you're doomed to repeat it.
Exactly. And it's not just about avoiding mistakes. It's about preserving the knowledge and skills we need to rebuild society. Things like agriculture, medicine, engineering, even art and storytelling.
Because those are the things that make us human, that give us hope, that connect us to something bigger.
It also talks about the importance of leadership. People who can inspire and guide others through the process. Leaders who are not only capable, but also compassionate, ethical, with a vision for the future.
Because ultimately, the future of humanity depends on it. That's a powerful message. And it applies even beyond a zombie apocalypse. It's our responsibility to create a better future for ourselves and the generations that come after us. This has been an amazing dive. Who would have thought a zombie survival guide could have so much to say about the real world?
It just goes to show, even in the craziest scenarios, there are things we can learn about being prepared, being resilient, and the strength of the human spirit.
But before we wrap up, I gotta ask one last question. If you had to pick one skill, one piece of knowledge from the Zombie Survival Guide that you think is, like, essential for surviving any disaster, what would it be?
Ooh, that's a hard one. So many good things in there. But if I had to choose just one, it would have to be situational awareness. Being observant, paying attention to what's around you, trusting your gut feeling if something feels off.
You know what? That's a fantastic choice. Because situational awareness, you can apply that to anything. Natural disasters, social upheaval, even just everyday life.
Exactly. It's all about being present, being engaged, being ready for whatever pops up, like developing that inner danger radar, you know?
Yeah, like that spidey sense for potential trouble.
Right. And the best part, you can train that sense. You can practice it, pay closer attention to the world around you.
So looking back at everything we've talked about, what are the biggest things that stand out to you from the Zombie Survival Guide?
Well, it really hit home for me that knowledge, it's a powerful thing. We can use it to see problems coming, to find solutions, to adapt to the unexpected. It's about being proactive, not just reacting to what's happening.
It's like being prepared, both physically and mentally, gives you a feeling of being in control, even when everything is going crazy.
Absolutely. And remember, these ideas, they're not just for zombies. Natural disasters, social unrest, any challenge that comes your way, life's unpredictable, right?
So if you could choose just one thing from the Zombie Survival Guide to focus on for your own preparedness, what would it be?
That's tough. But I think I'd go with building a strong, solid group of people you can trust. Because surviving is rarely a solo thing, and having that support system can make or break you.
That's so true. People you can depend on to share the load, to lift you up when you're down, that can be everything in a crisis. We're social creatures after all. We need each other.
Exactly. So as you're thinking about your own preparedness, think about who you'd want by your side when things hit the fan. Who are the people you can really count on?
This has been an incredible deep dive. I mean, who knew a book about zombies could be so packed with wisdom for navigating, well, just life in general?
It just goes to show you, sometimes the most unlikely places can hold the most valuable lessons about being prepared, being resilient, and the power we all have inside us.
And remember, the world can change in a heartbeat. So stay curious, stay informed, and stay prepared for whatever comes next.